What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. It's the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 40 on this Friday, December the 8th, 2023. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy, James D. Jackson, Tom Green will be along in just a little bit. Had a little bit of a schedule move around here, obviously. If you're a regular listener, viewer, you know, Monday, Thursday, typically where we kind of target these things. We bumped the show back a day because we had a Brent Venables Zoom, which was very interesting yesterday with the good folks at the Alamo Bowl. Obviously, Tom, James, and I will get into that a little bit later. Also had some hoop stuff yesterday as well. So we figured let's just bump this thing back a day, let the dust settle just a tiny bit more in the insanity that is the transfer portal. And we'll get into everything on Friday. We have a lot to get to. Like we said, we got guys declaring for the draft, reportedly. Got guys opting out of the bowl, guys into the transfer portal, and a whole lot more going on now. So we'll get into all of it here for you on the Sooners Illustrated podcast. But Collin, before we do transfer portal, which we have a lot to talk about, obviously, when it comes to that old portal, a little bit of recruiting news to get going here, because I'm sure a lot of you fans right now are curious. Should we get reinvested in Dominick McKinley? A lot of people are asking. People are asking. Obviously, if you're unfamiliar with Dominick McKinley, I think most of you fans are. Quick refresher. Very highly touted defensive lineman in the 2024 class. 5-star. We have him as the number 7 defensive lineman in the class. He's just outside the top 30-ish players in the country. Committed to Texas A&M way back at the beginning of the season. You know, it felt like Oklahoma was in the mix there, obviously. Obviously, most people know Jimbo Fisher got fired. Elijah Robinson, defensive line coach, no longer there. And now you've seen Oklahoma, other players, Danny Okoye in there, Nigel Smith in there, openly campaigning to try and flip Dominick McKinley back to Oklahoma. So, Collin, it's in a basic question, although maybe not an easy one for you to answer. Does Oklahoma have a shot here? Can they get back to the Dominick McKinley sweepstakes before signing day here in a couple of weeks?
Funny how everything that you just mentioned also distract from the fact that the early signing period is coming up just days away, right?
Yeah.
We're literally like 13, 14 days from typically the area that commands most of the headlines, and because of transfer portal and NFL draft declarations and the bowl game and basketball and all that, people forget that like the recruiting class is winding up too. And because of that, you always kind of get those final storylines. And it looks like one of the final few storylines of this 24 cycle down the stretch, of course, Dominick McKinley. And we've talked about this here on the show a couple different times. OU has been in contact with this guy for a while, even despite his pledge to A&M. Nigel Smith, Danny Okoye, I've noted on our board, those guys have been reaching out to Dom for basically months at this point. They've stayed in touch. Todd Bates has continued to recruit. And I think people forget it was a battle to the end for Dominick McKinley, to the point where Todd Bates was going to fly out to the state of Louisiana the day of the decision. Now, Oklahoma didn't end up winning out in the end, but there's a lot of belief behind the scenes that OU kind of finished second, a little bit ahead of Texas. But Texas was also very much in there. And I'm led to believe that OU and Texas have continued to sort of lick their lips here as all this is unfolded. Now, you touched on it briefly, Josh. It's very important to mention Elijah Robinson taking the Syracuse defensive coordinator job is the big domino that needed to fall. Jimbo Fisher getting fired really doesn't impact McKinley much at all. I don't even know if there was much contact between Fisher and the McKinley family to begin with. But Elijah Robinson is the guy that Dominick McKinley himself, who is a very quiet individual, as we know, he took to social media and said, as long as Elijah Robinson is at Texas A&M, I am 110% committed. Well, Fran Brown, who is Georgia's elite defensive backs coach, one of the best in all of college football, takes the Syracuse head coaching gig. And once that happened, everyone behind the scenes was like, oh boy, because Fran Brown and Elijah Robinson, for lack of a better term, are like brothers. I mean, they are as close as it gets, best friends, if you want to say that. So when Fran Brown not only offered Elijah Robinson the job, but gave him a salary that was pretty impressive. And Texas A&M on that side of the equation, Josh, I have to say this. I was stunned that they offered him the highest paid assistant coach position. I believe it would have been the highest paid assistant coach job in all of college football, but to my knowledge, I don't think there was any other sort of title outside of defensive line coach. So naturally, I don't think that they offered him the defensive coordinator spot or even a co-DC job, which I kind of expected. I don't even know if they offered him the associate head coach title. So, yeah, Elijah Robinson's going to take that job. And as a result, now Dominick McKinley's got to reevaluate things. And I really do believe that from what I've heard, Oklahoma's pretty optimistic. Now, looking at this objectively, I 110% understand Texas A&M's fan base's frustrations here because all this discussion surrounding guys who are either committed or on the roster, yes, it's not fair, but it's the world we live in. You know, I mean, even Oklahoma kind of had to go through this after sort of the mass exodus that took place with Lincoln Riley and all those players who left Norman, most notably Caleb Williams. Everyone talked about his future before he officially left, even before the bowl game was played. And so for A&M, obviously they're going to do whatever it takes. Now, the Aggies hired Sean Spencer, who was formerly the Florida defensive line coach. And I've personally heard nothing but good things about him. But he was, for lack of a better term, released by Florida's staff after kind of a frustrating year on the defensive side of the ball, gets hired in College Station. And the thing there is he's got to not only recruit all these players on the roster or currently committed, he has to get to know them flat out. I don't know that there's a lot of established relationships there between Spencer and all of these guys. And so from what I've heard, Dominick McKinley and his family are still feeling things out with Coach Chaos, I believe is his nickname. But OU's, this is the way I'll phrase it at the end of it all, OU's going to chip away at this now until either it falls or it stays firm. And David Stone has a great relationship with Dom. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we mentioned the other guys. Smith and McKinley have been in frequent contact. Bates, I know that McKinley's family loves Todd Bates, arguably one of their strongest, if not the strongest relationship that they have with an assistant coach. So this is huge, man. I don't know what's going to happen next, but everyone's waiting to see if Dominick McKinley's actually going to decommit from Texas A&M. And if that happens, you're looking at, let's just call it a week to a week and a half worth of a recruitment for a 5-star defensive tackle. I mean, this thing's going to be insane. And OU's certainly going to be a part of it.
It is going to be wild, and it's exciting stuff to keep up with. Topsy-turvy world of recruiting. Because, we talked about it on the show. Whenever Jimbo Fisher got fired, and we were curious, would Elijah Robinson stay there? And, the impact, because obviously Oklahoma fans have gotten used to, they don't want to be used to, but used to losing out on these highly touted defensive linemen to College Station, Texas A&M. It always felt like Don McKinley was the most possible because obviously David Hicks and Gabe Brownlow didn't need. They're there. They're at A&M. They're not in the portal even as of today. They're still not in the portal. But McKinley's just committed. He hasn't signed anything. So it could be very easy to potentially flip him. And we'll see what happens. Sign day a couple weeks away still. And it's just been interesting to see the full court press put on social media. Nigel Smith with the power line graphic that has one silhouette open, saying that's you, man. Slide right in right there with myself, Dane Jackson, David Stone, and Okoye. What a group it could be. It already is a great group, but what a group it could be with Don McKinley in there. So make sure to keep up with Collin and obviously all our great recruiting insiders, 24/7 Sports. Let you know how that could be going. Very, very interesting stuff. Now, as for the transfer portal, obviously it's been wild. A lot of you guys are in the portal. Tom and James, I'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But obviously Oklahoma fans are curious, where are they going to target? Where are they looking to add? Well, they've already made one ad. Michigan State offensive tackle Spencer Brown committed to Oklahoma earlier this week. OU's on the board in the portal. It feels like these transfer guys you kind of put into two piles, guys who are kind of depth ads who can probably help you out maybe right away, but certainly maybe down the line, and guys who are immediate plug and play. Feels like Spencer Brown's in that second group. Immediate plug and play as a grad transfer, obviously a 2-year starter at Michigan State at a right tackle, I think it is. Collin, talk about OU's vision here for Spencer Brown. Is he looked at as a starter right away next season? What went into landing him, and just kind of, I guess, your overall feel on what the get and add means for Oklahoma moving forward?
This is one of the first players Oklahoma targeted and made a priority within the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. I mean, right away. there was interest between the two. And offers came in for Spencer Brown. It was Ole Miss, USC, Oklahoma, a couple others. But Bill Bedenbaugh, Brent Venables, Oklahoma staff made it clear to him that if he wants to play in the SEC and start right away and be developed at a place like Oklahoma, that door is open. And he walked right through it. I mean, it lasted like 3 days tops, this quote unquote recruitment. And you look at this, it's funny too, Josh, and I'll say this kind of pulling the curtain back. Alan True and I were working on this recruitment together, and Spencer Brown told us at 24/7 Sports, like, hey, I'm probably going to visit Oklahoma on December 15th, but don't put that out there yet. And then all of a sudden, later that day, he just pulls the trigger. And it's like, what the hell is going on? I mean, these portal recruitments are crazy to follow.
Yeah.
But when there's a high-level offensive lineman out there, that's sometimes what it takes and what's going to take place. And so in Spencer's case, it totally checks out, right? Like you mentioned, 6'6", around 315 pounds. I believe he grades out really well as a run blocker specifically. We'll need to develop a little bit from a pass protection perspective, but I look at this and OU's got some encouraging foundational pieces on the offensive line, right? You got Jacob Sexton, who's proven to be someone you're really excited about. Caden Green, you brought in Troy Everett last year from the portal. You feel like that guy's going to be your center going into next year if and when Andrew Raym ships out. But losing Walter Rouse and Tyler Guyton supposedly to the NFL draft, we think that's going to happen. And, I want to let those guys make their decision, but they're both NFL draft-worthy players. Let's put it that way. You lose both tackles. Jacob Sexton, I know I talked to him before the season started, Josh, and he was like, yeah, I'm really excited about working at left tackle more because left hand is dominant hand, and it's a position he had gotten to know a little bit more, I believe, in high school, but he'd also had some experience playing right tackle in high school. So they needed him at right tackle during this season, but I believe that they would like to work him at left going into next year. Caden Green, I mean, I don't know what you do because he's already shown he's arguably an elite left guard. So you let those two slide into next year along the left side. Well, your best offensive lineman, in my opinion, Tyler Guyton, that dude's gone on the right side. Spencer Brown's just kind of a natural fit at right tackle. So you slot in a dude who's going to be in his 6th year of eligibility, and he's proven at the Power 5 level. And yeah, he has some developmental stuff that needs to get done in his game, but that was also the case with guys like Guyton and Rouse. And look what they became at Oklahoma. So really quality addition here, man. I really like the fact that we all kind of knew this was a position of need, and they checked the box right away. So quality get from Michigan State and a guy who I expect to slide right in there at a right tackle for Oklahoma.
Yeah, for sure. Bill Bedenbaugh has shown a knack for doing this in the recent history of here. Even obviously, look at guys like McKay Matoyer. Obviously, this last year, Walter Rouse. I mean, obviously they recruit that position at a high level. They put a lot of guys in the NFL, a lot of guys, Wanye Morris, but they've done a great job at recognizing where they need somebody and going out and getting it. And the track record kind of speaks for itself with Bill, because you look at every single year, they're putting at least 1 or 2 guys in the NFL, if not more. And it'll be the case again this year, we assume, with Walter Rouse and Tyler Guyton. Guyton, obviously a guy who's considered, a very high prospect. So it's just kind of a year after year thing. And I expect this year, this time next year, we're talking about Spencer Brown in the NFL draft as a guy probably after his year at Oklahoma with Bill Bedenbaugh. So the transfer portal, obviously, we're just scratching the surface. So Oklahoma's not going to be as insane with their level of ads as they've been the last couple of years. They don't need to be, but they're going to be active here, right? Obviously, give us some ideas on some targets. We'll start offensively because we just talked about Brown. Obviously, you've lost, 3 running backs to the portal so far. You lost that reserve tight end, and that position was just simply not very good last year. What are some positions and maybe some names that you think could make sense offensively first, we're going to defense in a second when it comes to the transfer portal for Oklahoma here over the next, several weeks or whatever.
Yeah, so starting with the offense, they add a guy. That's your first domino, but that should kind of start a chain reaction, right? You kind of think they're going to try and build out that side of the ball quickly because the defensive side of the ball, and we'll get into this, to me is a little bit more of a mystery right now. Offensively, though, early targets have been clearly identified, and they want to add a tight end. I've identified some names already that have come up. Most notably is Jalen Conyers, right? And I reported the other night there are frequent discussions between Conyers and Oklahoma staff. In fact, I texted Conyers just checking in on him, being like, "Hey, what's going on with you? How's it going? What's the outlook there? Are you setting visits, anything?" And he said, "I hadn't officially said anything, but Oklahoma staff that day that I texted him had just called him and asked, like, when can we get you on campus?" And so I believe Conyers is going to be on campus within the next week or so. Mm-hmm. I'm eyeing a couple other teams, though. He says he's down to 3, and I'll kind of get into that more for our VIP subscribers. I believe you can still get 1 month for $1. Then there's some other names out there who make some sense at tight end, but Conyers is the primary target. Wide receiver, I mean, we've had a couple of folks, Steve Wiltfong, Greg Biggins have hopped on. Deion Burks, wide receiver transfer guy. Mikey Matthews, another transfer wide receiver. Some of these guys are hearing from Oklahoma, but nothing officially set there. As far as the offensive line, though, with Spencer Brown in the mix, I think this is pretty interesting because now that you kind of have Brown slated as your right tackle, and you have Sexton, you have Green, you have Everett, you probably want to add 1 or 2 more, but are you, number one, looking for firm starter at like tackle? Is just right guard what you really want to solidify? We'll see. The guy I'm keeping an eye on closely is Gino Vandemark, a teammate of Spencer Brown from Michigan State. Oklahoma was one of the first to offer him. He's a big dude, Midwest kind of guy. I believe he's like 330 pounds at 6'6". He feels like a natural fit at right guard to me, but he has offers from, I think it's like Arkansas and so on and so forth. So that's another one. And there are a couple other offers that are out there, which we'll dive into more at Sooners Illustrated. But to close it out, I think the most curious positions when it comes to Oklahoma and the offensive transfer portal side of things, running back and quarterback. I think they're going to push for a running back addition. I think it has to be the right running back. But Sam Franklin, who played at UT Martin, he and I have been swapping some texts back and forth. He's very excited about the interest. He's got USC, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and someone else has offered him. He ran for more than 1,100 yards at UT Martin, scored 11 times. Really talented player. And I believe he will be visiting Oklahoma sometime soon, within the next week. So there's that name. And then, look, Raheem Sanders, right, from Arkansas.
Yeah.
He's going to get a call from literally everybody under the sun. And so I look at Raheem and I say, that's probably the dream get, but it's a tough one. But those two backs are kind of the first two that come to mind for me when you talk about Oklahoma and transfer portal targets at the position. But I still believe, at least in my opinion, and you might disagree, Oklahoma doesn't really need a guy out of the portal at the spot.
Yeah.
It could be a luxury to get one. So we'll see what happens there. And then quarterback, maybe adding a veteran presence is the right move. I don't see a name out there yet that makes a ton of sense. We'll see what happens, though, because as I've explained to our subscribers, like a lot of players are still looking at their bowl game, things of that nature. So more portal entries are going to take place, and the window closes on January 1st, end of day, I believe. So I think if they are going to add quarterback-wise, it's not a name that's been identified yet to this point.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's the sell there? If you're Oklahoma, that's tough because obviously you have Jackson Arnold sitting there. He's your guy, and then you're bringing in Michael Hawkins and Brendan Zerbrug in the recruiting class. We saw Oklahoma do this a couple years ago when it was clear they needed another guy, and it was really hard to get one. They tried to get Jackson Dart, didn't. They tried to get Chuba Purdy, didn't. And they ended up getting Davis Bevel, obviously. And we'll see if they have better luck this time, if they can find somebody who's at least a somewhat reliable backup option to Jackson Arnold. Obviously, OU fans have thrown out Casey Thompson. Obviously, he's been all over the place. He's in the portal. Somebody like that probably would make the most sense, I guess. And I actually agree with you on running back. It's wild to say that you could lose 3 guys to the position, including one of your more productive guys last year, and still feel like you're okay. That position's really deep, and they got guys coming in. Taylor Tatum, obviously. Xavier Robinson coming in. Obviously, Andy Bass won't be available. Had an unfortunate knee injury. State championship game, a week ago. But even so, Caleb Hicks is still sitting there. I mean, there's a lot to like in that room, even as it is now, without whatever they have. But like you said, probably could see them maybe adding at least one as kind of another depth option whenever we get there. That's going to be fun to see how that looks. Obviously, Barnes and Sawchuk both are going to be back. So that room is in good shape. Defensively, obviously, this is where actually most of the portal movement has been so far for Oklahoma. Kelvin Gilliam reportedly in the portal yesterday. You loop in Key Lawrence hopped in the portal. It's kind of a bevy of guys. Most of the guys, Richie Grimes, have actually been on the defensive side so far. Not a ton of guys who you would have thought would be stars necessarily next year, but a lot of guys on defense. Where are you identifying Oklahoma as being aggressive here positionally on the defensive side? And what's maybe a name or two that you think you could see ending up in Crimson, obviously, when this is all said and done?
Yeah, I mean, look, the primary goal between the recruiting class and the transfer portal class is to continue to build out the lines of scrimmage, right? And I look at this and I think Oklahoma, 2 parts of the equation. You want to shore up the front now, but you want to have guys who you can build with going into the future. Because in an ideal world, as you move to the SEC, you have guys coming in from the transfer portal cycle or the recruiting class who are not only going to come in and help you right away, but are also going to probably be around for a while. And so the immediate name that comes to mind for me is Chris McClellan, right? Was an Owasso Ram.
Ram Pride.
Yeah, Ram Pride. There you go, Josh. He went to Florida. Oklahoma was very much in the mix for him once upon a time. And now that he's back in the portal, I swapped some messages with Chris. He's a great guy. I got to know him, obviously, during the high school side of things. And he told me, he was like, I haven't officially entered the portal yet, but I've had to keep my phone on the charger every single day. Like he's like, dude, it's been nuts, just people blowing me up. And now that he's officially in, I mean, offers everywhere. Florida State offered right away. Arkansas, so on and so forth. Everybody's after him. But Oklahoma's going to be, I mean, I would argue this is one of their top priorities in the portal right now. So expect Chris McClellan to quickly maybe iron out a visit with OU. I think that Todd Bates is going to have a really efficient sell with him. You can kind of tell that Chris might be leaning towards a return home, which is why it sounds like Arkansas and Oklahoma are some early contenders. But, man, I mean, like if Florida State presses, I don't know what happens next. You know what I mean? So Chris McClellan along the front line. A couple other names I've heard and I've mentioned on the board, but still ironing some things out there. Linebacker Christopher Paul, Pooh Paul, who they that's their nickname for him, out of the state of Arkansas, or out of the program of Arkansas, I should say, from Florida.
Yeah.
But he leaves the state of Arkansas as arguably the top linebacker in the transfer portal. And that's been reflected. I think Texas A&M, Oklahoma, everybody's in on this guy. That's probably the name to know at linebacker if you're OU. Now, where does OU stand within his portal recruitment? I don't know, because there's so many other teams. There's so many other teams.
He's got a lot of offers, yeah.
I would encourage fans who haven't seen, or maybe you don't have a Twitter account, like Google maybe who all is offered him. Because I think it's like Auburn. I mean, everybody's in on this dude. So you just kind of have to wait and see there, right? And then there's defensive back, which I believe is kind of the overlooked need for Oklahoma in the portal, but also I think they kind of have to be selective. I am of the belief that corner is more of a need than safety for OU in the transfer cycle. You got to like where you're at safety. But if there's someone out there like an Andrew Makuba, you make the phone call. So let's start there.
Sure.
Obviously, Makuba entered the portal. I had a text come in about 8 o'clock this morning from sources like, hey, Makuba's going to visit Oklahoma within the next week. And I've seen since then it's been blowing up on social media. I know our own Mike Roach at 24/7 Sports put something up for our subscribers today about how everything's shaking out there. I don't want to dive into the situation too much because I'm going to have some notes up on him later this afternoon. But Makuba, expect him to be on campus within the next 7 days in Norman. And I'll say this. Makuba is one of my favorite high school players I've ever covered. Watching that dude at Austin LBJ, he and Latrell McCutcheon were teammates back then, and McCutcheon was an Oklahoma commit once upon a time. So I would go out there, obviously, to cover McCutcheon. But Makuba, as a once upon a time Clemson commit, I couldn't stop watching him. He was so good. I mean, maybe one of the best high school safeties I've ever seen. He's so much fun to watch. He played wide receiver at LBJ too at times and just, bean tops guys all day. Like Mosses, these dudes. He is insanely talented. And people forget he was a freshman All-American at Clemson.
Right.
Now, he comes off of a year where probably expectations didn't deliver relative to preseason hype, but he's still every bit of the talent. And because of that, you've got programs like Oklahoma, USC, Oregon, Texas, all involved early on. And I wouldn't be surprised if more are on the way. So Makuba's a big name. And then you've got a corner, obviously Toriano Pride hit the portal, but entered in with a do not contact tag. And Missouri ends up winning in the end. That, to me, really checks out based on what I had heard. So we'll see. Des Malone from San Diego State is now kind of the name you got to know at corner if you're an Oklahoma fan. Really good player at SDSU. Kind of a guy that I think a lot of big-name programs are going to be involved with at cornerback. So we'll see. I texted a couple people in Des Malone's camp. They said they're hearing from basically everyone in America, trying to figure out what's next visit-wise or anything like that. But Oklahoma's zeroing in on him. But then at the end of it, why I kind of mentioned earlier in the show is, like, I think this side of the ball for OU as far as transfers, the picture hasn't been fully painted, right? Like, I don't think that their priority targets or everyone who they want to go after is in the portal yet. There are probably some names out there who are figuring out what their world looks like. And if they were to hit the portal, then Oklahoma's like, okay, let's go all in. But you're not going to know, at least for a few days, because bowl games and things of that nature and exit meetings and things like that. So stay tuned as far as the transfer portal defensive side of the equation, because I think Oklahoma is really excited about who's on the board currently, but kind of across the country, because defense is a height, weight, speed kind of game, the best players, if they have yet to enter the portal, everyone's going to wait to see what happens with those guys. And I think that the Sooners are kind of under that umbrella.
Yeah, and you would imagine some of this obviously gets affected too by some decisions that need to still be made on Oklahoma's roster. Obviously, reportedly, Danny Stutsman is looking to go to the NFL, but he hasn't said anything officially yet. Brent Venables chose not to really get into it. In that Zoom press conference yesterday, Billy Bowman, another one, has a decision to make if he's going to come back to school or go ahead and chase that NFL dream. And obviously that lets you know, not that those positions, like we just said, linebacker and safety, are dire without those guys, but you're much more inclined to put the full court press for somebody without those two. So still a lot to be ironed out and figured out, obviously, here over the next week or two, or even after the bowl game, obviously, for some of these guys. So we'll see how that all shakes out. CK, appreciate you as always. Be sure to subscribe, Oklahoma.247sports.com. Colin's been all over it with all the transfer portal stuff, and obviously all our great insiders have been contributing as well. It's crazy times. So hop aboard. Lots of good stuff and intel coming in regularly from our guy here. All right, we'll go ahead and get James and Tom in. We're going to talk about Oklahoma, all the guys that have enter the portal from the Sooners. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the Stutsman decision, Bowman decision, like I kind of just referenced. Maybe even a little bit of hoops on the way out. That team is playing really, really well. We'll talk about that as well. Coming up right here, right now, on the Sooners Illustrated podcast. All right, we now bring in James D. Jackson, Tom Green here to hit some more team stuff on the back end. Gentlemen, obviously the big news of the week right now is not even a transfer portal guy, which we're going to get a lot of transfer portal guys in just a second because there's a lot of Sooners in that thing. But Danny Stutsman reportedly entering the draft. So according to Sooner Scoop, which is over at On3, they reported earlier this week that Danny Stutsman has told Brent Venables and told Oklahoma that he is going to enter the NFL draft, obviously forego his senior season and presumably forego the bowl game as well. Obviously, as of now, Friday at 12:19 that we're sitting here, Danny has not said anything about this publicly. Brent Venables was asked about it yesterday at his Alamo Bowl Zoom press conference. He didn't say anything. He certainly left me with the impression that he is going to go, the way he kind of talked about it, said, everything has its time. I'll let Danny announce that when he's ready, blah, blah, blah. But guys, obviously, and again, want to reiterate, he hasn't said anything. We have not confirmed it. That's according to Sooner Scoop. That's saying that Danny is going to go ahead and go to the NFL next year. This would be obviously a huge blow for Oklahoma moving forward. I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I honestly thought that Danny would be back. I thought a year in the SEC was going to do wonders for him NFL-wise. But when you get that draft grade back and you like it, it's hard not to take it. What are some thoughts here, guys, on kind of all of this? Are you surprised? How big of a loss is it? Kind of all of it. Put it into context for us if Stutsman does, in fact, go to the NFL next year and is not back with Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you, mildly surprised. I kind of expected him to be back for a senior season, especially the way he kind of talked about it, especially on the podcast with him and Jaron. Sounded like, he was ready to contribute in the SEC for a year, get that under his belt and kind of improve his stock a little bit. But obviously things change when you get your, draft feedback back and, if he's a mid-second rounder or day two type of guy, like that, it's hard to pass that up. Obviously, you could improve your stock if you come back. You could, be in the race for the butt kiss. You can get a SEC season under your belt. You can keep on building on these numbers that you've put up the last 2 years and really put more on tape for scouts. But you could also get injured. And he's a guy who's dealt with some injuries in his career. Obviously missed a game and a half this year with that ankle injury. But again, if you're getting a day two grade, it's hard to turn that down in this situation. But yeah, certainly, if he does end up leaving, and the way Brent Venables talked about it, it was very much a reading between the lines type of thing. He's like, I'll let Danny comment on that when he's ready to. You use the words, everything has its time. Very similar phrasing to what he used when he talked about Dylan Gabriel toward the end of the season about whether he might come back for another year. So it's just, the phrasing, the way he said it, it just sounds like this is what it's going to be with Danny. And it's a big loss for them. Like, yes, they have some younger linebackers that they really like, but you're talking about a guy that led the team in tackles each of the last 2 years, has been one of the most productive linebackers in the country during that span, 16 tackles for loss, probably should have been a finalist for the Butkus Award too. Probably would have been if he hadn't missed a game and a half. But, I mean, it's a tough loss regardless.
It's kind of hard to have a genuine reaction because we don't know if it's true yet. I mean, we literally don't know at this point in time. We're still speculating, and we know what Brent Venables said and things like that. And it makes it kind of seem like it's going to happen because you would think he would just shoot it down if that's not the case at all. But it's hard to have a genuine reaction to it because when you think about it, yeah, it would be a significant blow to the linebacker room. I mean that's your guy. We talked about it all year. We have said he was the leader of the team. I mean, I know I've said it a couple of times. He's not just the leader of defense. I think he was the leader of the team overall. His tenacity, his attitude, all of that pivoted towards all the other players. So if he does leave that, I mean, that's a big blow. You got to find that the next guy to step up. I mean, that's all it is to it. And I think he's going to have a bunch of young guys being in the game next year. I mean, that's what it's going to be. We're going to see a lot of that in the bowl game, as Brent Venables said. A lot of guys that didn't get to play a lot, didn't get to start, are going to be out there, and we're going to see. So it's time to figure out who the next leader is because. Dylan Gabriel also has a possibility of leaving. I know he's in the transfer portal now, but you never know what could happen in that situation. But, I mean, you really got to find who's the next guy. Is it Jackson Arnold? Is it somebody on the defense? Is Billy Bowman coming back? All those things factor into it. But, yeah, as of right now, losing Danny Stutsman will be a very big blow, especially as you try to get into the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that last year he led the team in total snaps. This year he led the linebacker core in total snaps, would have been up there for the team total if he hadn't missed a game and a half with that ankle injury. And again, just the production. Look, you have guys that have shown that they have a bright future. You know, Kip Lewis was really good in spots this year. Kobe McKenzie came on strong in a couple points.
Yeah.
You know, Jerry Kanik is still developing there, but he's a guy that's obviously played a lot of ball. Lewis Carter is another guy that they're pretty high on. Samuel Masigo, even though he's playing a little bit more of the cheetah spot. They have guys, and you know, linebacker is a position that is Brent Venables' baby. That is his bread and butter. Those are the guys that he really develops and works and, you know, turns into NFL type talents. And if Danny Stutsman feels that 2 years in that system with Brent Venables has, you know, put him in a good position to make that leap to the NFL, I mean, good for him. Go for it. But, you know, they're going to need to probably address that position in the portal, even though they have some bodies there, just to get probably, you know, a more veteran presence in that room too. And I know you and Collin talked about, you know, Chris Paul, the Arkansas linebacker, earlier. Obviously, a guy with SEC experience, if they can get him, that would be huge, clearly. But again, if Danny does end up leaving, which it seems like that's going to be the case, it's a tough blow for them.
I really like Kip Lewis. I'm high on him. I mean, he did a very good job stepping in for Danny Stutsman when Danny Stutsman went down. I mean, I think he led the team in tackles at the times that he was in there for Danny Stutsman. And then at the end of the year, we saw them both on the field at the same time, kind of playing together. So, I mean, he is going to be the one that has the experience there, I guess. I mean, Jared Kanik should have more than him, but I think he was doing more with the role he was given at the time. So I think Kip Lewis will be a big person to look after. See how he's going to develop this offseason. We've always talked about him gaining weight. I mean, he seems pretty good right now where he's at. I mean, if he gains some weight too, I mean, he could be the next Danny Stutsman or a guy that's, you know, remembered for a long time here at OU.
Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure, obviously, on the development of Kip and Kobe and Kanik, and obviously even those young guys coming up, Lewis Carter, Samuel Masigo. You need all those guys to come along now if Danny is in fact gone. Obviously, I mean, Stutsman was the leading tackle on this team by damn near 40 tackles. I mean, he's far and away the most productive guy. The only 2 games they lost this year was when Danny was out. Also, we talked about that many times. He's a huge part of the team, both on the field and off it. Obviously, we saw that Texas pregame speech. Can't lose the game after a guy does that. Who's going to be that guy after Danny's gone? So if that's the way it goes, it's a huge loss, obviously. When I say it's surprising, certainly not that I don't think Danny can play in the NFL, because I do, and he will absolutely get drafted. It just felt like that guy loves being at OU, and he wants to play in the SEC, and he can raise his stock so much higher. It felt like if he played another season and was just as productive in the SEC next year, and also like in 2023, 2024 college football with NIL, who's more marketable at OU in any sport than Danny Stutsman is right now? I mean, that guy is going to make money at OU. He's not playing for free out there by any means if he came back. Now, is it NFL money? No, but it's money. So we'll see. Obviously, it's not a stunning decision if that's the way this goes, but it is a little surprising, and obviously a big blow. And the other one is Billy Bowman, like James kind of touched on. He was on the show as soon as Sports Talk with Roland Tate Lyman on, I think that was Monday. This week's been long.
Yeah,
Monday. And he said that he hadn't made a decision yet. He was focused on the Alamo Bowl. He's kind of the other big matzo ball hanging out there right now, as far as, if you had asked me a week ago, I would have said Danny and Billy will both be back. I felt pretty good about that. But now that if Danny's reportedly going, I'm kind of thinking like maybe Billy will as well. Gut check feel for both of you guys, and we'll get into some transfer portal stuff on Billy Bowman. Do you think he comes back where you where you at right now with Billy? That's another big one. Obviously, Danny and Billy are the 2 guys on this defense all year that kind of made it go. Tough to replace both in one cycle if that's the way this ends up.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if Billy goes. I mean, his stock's really high right now. Obviously, the production is there. What he did, you know, second in the nation in interceptions, lead the nation in pick sixes. It's been, you know, along with Danny, arguably the best defensive player on this team the last 2 years. But you know, if he's getting a grade back, you know, like Danny, if he's getting a grade that he feels is, you know, hard to pass up, I mean, he's going to go for it. Again, if he leaves, Oklahoma's going to have to, you know, probably add another safety in the portal. You know, you have a good core there with Peyton Bowen and Robert Spears-Jennings. But if Billy Bowman leaves, you're going to need some more bodies back there and some more experience too. My gut right now, I would, and this isn't based on anything, that is just,
Sure.
If Danny leaves, I find it more likely to see Billy Bowman making that jump too.
Yeah, me too.
But also, I mean, listening to him talk on Monday, I wasn't convinced that he was going to leave.
It sounds like, I mean, when we haven't really heard from Danny Stutsman, but when you hear from Billy Bowman, it's like maybe they're waiting on this to see how this team shapes up. I mean, Brent Venables talked about, who they expect to bring in. He's expecting 34, 35 new guys in, 10 in the transfer portal, 20, 27 or so through just signing high school guys. Because at this point in time, it's like, what would you be waiting on in terms of, not announcing? You look at other guys like Spencer Rattler. He's already announced he's going to the NFL. There's guys out there that have already announced. You can start getting ready, start doing your training and everything like that. It seems like maybe they're waiting on something. Maybe they're seeing how this team shapes up. I mean, how they're going to look. I mean, that could be the case. I'm not for sure. Like Tom said, it's not based on anything. I'm just trying to speculate here. Maybe that's something that Billy Bowman is waiting on. Maybe it's something Danny Stutsman is waiting on, just to see where this team is at. And there's no doubt in our minds that you would welcome them back with open arms. I mean, they're the two best guys on the defense. I mean, overall, they're just the two best guys, and they showed it this season. So having them back, that leadership they bring would be impeccable for OU.
Yeah, and like Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman are two guys that you kind of back up the Brinks truck for in terms of NIL money.
Exactly.
Yep.
And maybe there's some negotiations going on there, trying to get them a little bit more to convince Billy to stay or something like that. He should leverage whatever opportunity he has and not rush a decision. But look, he's got plenty of time to make a decision. It sounds like he's committed to playing in the bowl game, which obviously is big for Oklahoma to kind of close out the year and try to get that 11th win, having one of their best defensive players out there. So we'll see how it all shapes out. It's going to be an interesting month.
Absolutely. And obviously, like I've referenced, transfer portal is alive and well. A lot of guys have hopped in there for Oklahoma. There's a common kind of theme here with the guys who have hopped in, and we'll get into some of that here in just a second. But just to recap, and obviously some of these guys we've talked about already, but there's 12 guys in the portal as of now. Dylan Gabriel, Tawi Walker, Marcus Major, Dalen Smothers, so 3 running backs, tight end Jace Llewellyn, DJ Graham, who we talked about, Savion Burr, Nate Anderson, Marcus Hicks along the offensive line. And then on defense, Reggie Grimes, Key Lawrence, and the latest, Kelvin Gilliam yesterday. So 12 guys. Outside of Kelvin Gilliam, maybe you could talk me into, I don't think any of these guys would be starters on next year's team. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel, that it's Jackson Arnold's time next year. So, you're not losing, not to diminish any of these guys as players, but there's nobody here that's just a huge body blow. A lot of these guys are from the previous regime too, which is noteworthy. A lot of these guys are Alex Grinch guys, especially on defense. They've only lost 3 guys on defense. They all were Alex Grinch guys. And Key Lawrence, Reggie Grimes, and now Kelvin Gilliam. What are some thoughts for you guys? Take things that jump out. So 12 guys in the portal, like I said, I don't think there's anybody here who you're saying like, wow, that really hurts. Obviously, some guys that you wouldn't necessarily want to lose. Dalen Smothers probably falls in that category. Maybe even Kelvin Gilliam falls into that category. But obviously, 12 guys now in the portal. What has kind of stuck out for you guys here in this first week as OU they're cleaning out some spots here. There's some turnover being done with this roster right now as they try to get ready again for the SEC and get this roster more in Venables' vision, Venables' eye, I guess, before they make that big move.
Yeah, I think the one that might have been a little bit surprising, like you said, was Kelvin Gilliam. Just a guy, he was pretty highly rated coming out. Just hasn't really made a big impact. Obviously they need to bulk up on that defensive line. They need to get some more guys in there as they move to the SEC because that is a line of scrimmage league. So him getting in there is a little bit surprising, but obviously I think Oklahoma's going to, try to add some guys in the portal. And obviously they have a very, pretty highly touted 2024 class coming in that it seems that they're still working to build on. The running back situation, again, we kind of figured that there would be some attrition there just because it's kind of a log jam, especially with, Gavin Sawchuk, Javante Barnes, and, bringing in guys like Taylor Tatum and Xavier Robinson and Andy Bass. So those aren't really surprising. Tight end is another spot. Like we talked about it all year. Like the tight end position just was not living up to, the standard for Oklahoma this season. It was a clear weak link on this team. So to see Jason Llewellyn hop in there, also not a surprise. They're clearly going to try to bring someone in there along with Devon Mitchell in the 24 class and try to improve that position. So again, 12 guys, it seems like a lot, but I mean, lots of schools have lots of turnover in this day and age. Guys getting recruited over, guys not happy with their playing time, guys who just might not be a cultural fit anymore. Again, like you said, a lot of these guys were from the previous regime. Brent Venables is trying to build this program in his image, how he sees fit. There's just going to be some natural attrition there.
I think in the short term, losing guys like Dylan Gabriel, Tawi Walker, Key Lawrence, those guys that you've seen play this year, just like for this bowl game, just for one game, that's where it hurts the most. But I think overall, when you look at it for next year, I think OU's is just fine. They're in a good spot because we know who they're going to bring behind every single one of those guys that we just talked about. I mean, I've always liked Key Lawrence. I mean, everybody knows that he was a good guy. No, he was a good guy. He came to watch our flag games, everything. He was a good guy. I like him. He made some good plays out there at OU. I mean, he had some plays where he didn't, gave up some bust here and there, but overall he was a very good player. I think. I know he got some flack for a lot of the season, but he kind of was the attitude as well. He fed off of Danny Stutsman. He was a guy that you saw a lot, talking about, where OU is now, what are they going to say now, things like that. He's one of those guys. I mean, and you can't say enough about Dylan Gabriel and Tawi Walker and what they did this year. So I mean, in the short term, those are the guys I think that will be tough to overcome just for this one bowl game. But next year, I think Oklahoma is just in a fine position. They'll be just all right.
And we'll see where a lot of these guys end up. Obviously, outside of Marcus Hicks, I think was like South Dakota or something really tiny like that. Yeah, South Dakota State. Obviously, all these other guys haven't committed yet. Key Lawrence had that visit to Ole Miss. So we'll see where a lot of these guys end up. I'm always fascinated in that because we have these opinions of these guys when they're at OU. You watch them play, but really nothing tells you more about what kind of level of player they actually are than when they hit the portal and you see what their market is and where they wind up. It's going to be fascinating to see where a lot of these guys end up. Marcus Major, Tawi Walker, where can they land a job? Basically, it's going to be kind of fun to see. Dylan Gabriel, we talked about that a little bit on Monday. So,
on Tawi Walker, I forgot. On social media, it was DeMarco Murray kind of gave a thumbs up to his highlight tape. For at OU, it was like okay, I see it because just because they're in the transfer portal doesn't mean they're going to leave necessarily. There's still a chance they can come back. It hasn't happened a lot, but. There's a chance. So it was good to see DeMarco. It was good to see DeMarco giving a thumbs up and things like that to it.
I mean, it could also just be that they're leaving on good terms. I know Tawi had his problems. He had that in-house suspension for a game.
Right.
He told us early in the season that he when he first got here, he thought that DeMarco Murray didn't like him. But realized that's just kind of coaching that he needed. And also, look, they're two Las Vegas guys. And we talked about it with Tawi. He's got a family, he's got a young child to provide for. So, to me, that felt like DeMarco being like, "Hey, man, go do your thing, go secure your family's future, and represent for Las Vegas."
and that's pretty cool because that may have been holding Tawi Walker back from other schools. Maybe they're thinking, if you're having problems with coaches, we don't know if we should have you here. But DeMarco Murray showing that they're on good terms and things like that, it could help Tawi Walker out. So that's a pretty cool notion if that's the case.
Yeah. And of course, all these coaches, they reach out to other programs like we heard Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby earlier this season with Andrel Anthony. When he hit the portal, they reached out to some people they knew at Michigan. And everybody there was like, "Yeah, man, we wish we could keep him," but he just needed a fresh start. And he felt like he found that at Oklahoma. So, all these coaches are going to do their due diligence. These players are going to do their due diligence and try to find the best opportunities for themselves. And it'll be interesting to see where they wind up, especially a guy like Dylan Gabriel.
100%. Transfer portal season is alive and well. Like I said, 12 guys in the portal right now for Oklahoma. We'll see if there's any more. Obviously, maybe some guys still trying to decide how they want to proceed. You got to have some tough conversations with the coaches, things like that. Obviously, it was a lot on Monday. It was just an avalanche. It's kind of slowed down since then, but still that portal's still open for another several weeks. So we'll see what happens here before now and January 1st. Closing out the show on a little bit of hoops here on the back end. Team is good. We talked about it last week. Had the McCaslin game, which was awesome. Really, really cool. Obviously, not a resume builder by any means against Arkansas Pine Bluff, but it was a really cool setting. They just whacked Providence on Tuesday. They're 8-0. They're number 19 in the AP poll. They have Arkansas in Tulsa tomorrow, Saturday. If you win that, you're probably in the top 15, maybe the fringe of the top 10. This team is fun right now. Tom, they feel like the real deal. I mean, we were there on Tuesday. That Providence game was nip and tuck pretty much the whole way, and then they ran away. They ended up winning by 21 in a game they were down in the second half. They ended up winning by 20 plus. Team's a lot of fun, and I think OU fans should probably start to get a little excited here.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this new up-tempo playing style that they've got, but what kind of gets overlooked in the emphasis on the offense there is just that, hey, this team plays defense too, man.
Yep.
They talk about it a lot. DCO, defense creates offense. We saw that in that Providence game. I mean, Providence went ahead by 1, like midway through, like pretty early in the second half. After kind of coming back a little bit because Oklahoma controlled it for most of the first half. The final 10 minutes, Oklahoma held Providence to 7 points. They finished that game on like a 26-7 run. It was ridiculous. I think they forced 15 turnovers. 13 of those were steals. That's going to produce. Like they've got the guards that can push it. It feels like Lo Suzan and Javion McCollum can just get into the paint at will. And whether it's we saw Los kind of hunt his shot a little bit more and be a little bit more aggressive scoring wise when he's usually the guy that's kind of more of a distributor. Javion McCollum's been great. Providence coach Kim English compared him to Allen Iverson out there. Yeah. And look, I'm not saying he's Allen Iverson, but when a coach in the Big East throws out that comparison, like it opens your eyes because Allen Iverson was the best player in the Big East for 2 years before being the number 1 draft pick and going on to a Hall of Fame career. This roster has just been really impressive so far. The way John Hewley and Sam Godwin have kind of complemented themselves. Tega's taken that next step from his freshman year to his sophomore year. It's just a real solid core of guys. And like Porter Moser said, like the thing that stood out to him is that it's a very unselfish group. They're not relying on just one guy every night to go out there and get 20, 25 points. You're seeing Javion score 18, 19 some games. You're seeing Tega Owe put up, 18 to 20. You're seeing Los get in there. He had 11 points and, 15 rebounds or whatever the other night. These guys, they're stepping up in different spots. Sam Godwin had a dozen the other night. John Hewley's been good. Jalen Moore is just a psychopath ball of energy out there. It's been fun to watch this team, especially as a newcomer who didn't really get to watch Oklahoma much last year. And everybody prepping me is like, man, this team's tough to watch. It's not a very aesthetically pleasing style of basketball. And then I come in and it's just night and day from what I was told to expect. So if you get a chance, definitely go out there and watch this team. The students showed up pretty well the other night for a Tuesday night 6:00 tip. I'm sure it's going to be a great crowd in Tulsa, even though it's probably going to be more Arkansas fans there. But, this team just keeps stacking wins. They're getting more and more national attention. We've seen John Rothstein, John Goodman, shout out Porter Moser and what they've done so far. Yeah.
Man, having prime Allen Iverson out there is very good for OU. that was fun to hear. I think this men's team, they're going to get to the point where it's going to be Buddy Hield, Trae Young, fan type of numbers. The stadium's going to get filled up. It's that type of team. I think this is a very exciting team. Josh has been on them all season. They're very athletic. This is exactly what people thought Porter Moser would bring to Oklahoma. And I think it's taken 3 years for him to actually get to that point. Yeah. So that's good for him. It's good for OU, especially because, as you said, I think they're a top 15 team as of right now. They're playing outstanding. Beating the top dogs and everything. So this is fun. This is fun, man. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, I think they're up to number 15 in the net ratings. Obviously, got a couple quad 1 wins under the belt. Quad 2 win against USC, looking really good. So they're building that resume, and we're going to learn a lot about. We learned a lot about them on Tuesday night against Providence. That was a very good defensive team that came in to Lloyd Noble. We're going to learn a little bit more about Arkansas, which Eric Musselman just seems to. No matter how the season shakes out, he seems to get that team to the Elite Eight every year. And then, in a couple of weeks, that trip to Charlotte to face UNC is going to be another huge test. before Big 12 play opens. So they're going to be battle tested going into conference play because we all know how tough that Big 12 schedule is. But man, they've answered the call every time out so far.
Yeah, McCollum's just been great. I mean, they have players around him, but he's just been outstanding. I mean, they put his highlights out on social media, and CJ McCollum, NBA
saw that.
Players president, however it is, player, he shouted him out. He's good. So I mean, that's big time, man. Oh, he's getting some national recognition, I think, here.
No relation.
No relation.
No relation. Jay McCollum is so good.
Yeah.
He's been awesome to watch. And on Tuesday night at Providence game, there was a bunch of NBA teams there represented. And I don't know for sure. Obviously, I'm just speculating, but I feel like a lot of them are there for him. He has been so fun to watch. And yeah, they're flying around. They're forcing turnovers, creating fast break opportunities. They're blocking shots. They're getting boards. It's a night and day team from last year. And obviously, we'll wait and see. The only question I really have right now about the team is they're going to lose games. It's basketball. They're going to lose games. The Big 12 is way too good. You're not going to just keep winning every single night the whole way through. You play good teams on the road, literally in the Big 12, pretty much every single time out. How they respond when that happens, whenever they finally have some kind of adversity, because so far there's been none. It's been all good so far. Whenever they do stumble for the first time, do they avoid it spiraling on them? Because I think the last couple of years that would happen. You have a little bit of momentum and confidence, and then have a couple of tough losses in a row. Then it just would snowball into 3-4 more, and it's like, okay, well now we're in some deep trouble now. So we'll see what it looks like whenever we get there. But so far so good, really fun. Saw some people kind of on the crowd a little bit on Tuesday. Look, I was there. I've been to a lot of 6 o'clock games in the middle of the week for Lloyd Noble Center. It's really hard to get there on time for a 6 o'clock game in Norman at the Lloyd Noble Center. That was pretty good. It was a pretty good crowd, I thought. It was loud. Students were there early. It's coming around. Porter Moser's got it brewing a little bit. If you beat Arkansas on Saturday, the hype just gets even higher. So looking forward to that at the BOK Center. Tom and I planning to get up there. Still at the mercy of some football stuff, but planning to be in Tulsa tomorrow for that Arkansas game. As for the women, James, I'll let you hop in real quick. So they just played Grambling, I think it was last week, destroyed them. Yep. They're in kind of an open spot in their schedule. They haven't played a lot here, frankly, since last Thursday, since we last talked about them. They have UNLV tomorrow. They're kind of in a holding pattern. After that good start, those couple of losses, and we're kind of just waiting to see them get back into regular action against power teams to kind of get re-excited. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said last time, there's been no tough, bad losses just yet. I mean, the teams they lost to have been ranked teams. They have 2 losses on the year, so it's not like it's just a terrible start and things like that. They're still going to be all right. I think when they get back into playing, it'll help them out. So like UNLV this Saturday should be a pretty good matchup because both of those teams, won their respective conferences last year. So I mean, they still have something, in the gas tank there. So if OU women's can win this game, it'll help them out in the rankings. They've already were getting votes as it was last week after the 2 losses. So that would help a lot to take this team down. And if they do it handily, that could put them back in the top 25. I think so.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them get back out and play some better competition here coming up pretty soon with UNLV tomorrow, like you said. Because it felt like it just feels like they haven't played a lot the last 2 weeks. The way their schedule kind of worked out, it's like when do they play next?
Yeah, exactly.
They're in Norman tomorrow, about the same time as the men. So double screen it if you're at home.
And I should, as you guys should be out in Tulsa. I should be out there before I head to the state championships for football, for high school football. So try to give a lot on the site tomorrow. I should be expecting a lot on Saturday.
Yeah. Full day. Fun times. Transfer portal. Hoops are playing well, both men and women. A lot to like. A lot to read and to hop aboard. Oklahoma.247sports.com. Sooners Illustrated. Become a VIP subscriber. Get all the VIP intel. There is a ton on there right now with transfer portal stuff and more to come here over the next few weeks. Obviously, heading up to signing day. And obviously, as the window, like I said, it's still open until January 1st. So we're just getting going on the insanity that is this month. That's it for us for now. We'll be back on Monday, talk about all the latest in the portal and whatever else is going to happen between now and then. Things will happen. We'll get into that on Monday's show. We'll see you then. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review wherever you're listening or watching. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. All the latest press conferences, player interviews, things like that. Podcasts all can be found on there. We'll see you guys back here Monday for the next edition of the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.